Okay, tree trunks. How can we get some really realistic looking tree trunks? Well, here we are a week later, and our tree trunks with the spinach has dried. You remember seeing one of those tree trunks that looked very fat before when it was nice and new. Now that it's dried after about a week, it's shrunk down to about half the size, and it looks really quite cool. So now I will show you what the tree will look like once I put all the foliage onto it. And I'm paying particular attention to putting extra glue around where the trunk joins, so that when I sprinkle in, you get a better joint tree there. So it comes up like that. Now with the one root, we're going to get several different kinds of trees. Here's the next one. The very tips of the roots of the spinach, or if you have a spinach root that's very small like this one was, you get a nice hairy piece on the end. Now what I'm going to do now is take some glue, and there's some white glue and some fibre that I've cut from twine to pieces, and then I'm going to just sort of sprinkle it all over. I put the fibres, really short fibres, and that's going to have a result of a fairly tight sort of tree once we get the glue on. The sprinkling and gluing with the brush a few times, just so that it gets, yeah, that's the first time you get it fairly loose. We're going to do it several times. Okay, and then after that first lot of glue has finished, go over again, dabbing on the bits that were missed or on the bits that were not missed, and you'll find you will then build up a thicker layer of vegetation on it. You get some trees that are fairly tight. The growth is fairly tight towards the branches themselves, but you get one that's a little bit like but you do get trees like that. So the third one was a similar style, but instead I put the longer fibres on first. As per usual, I want to get the fibre from some twine, chop some off, and in this case I'm going to make it all disorderly, because I'm going to take a root that's got spindly ends to it, daub some glue on the end of it so that it's going to have a whole bunch of that fibre stick to it, and that's going to be the basis of my very thin branches that are smaller fibre branches. I set that aside. Now it's very spindly, as you can see, but that's going to give me a fairly wide canopy. And now I'm going to be painting those fibres with glue sporadically, and then get some finer or shorter fibres. The first lot were maybe an inch long, or a couple of centimetres, and the next lot are going to be ones that are like 5 millimetres or half an inch, quarter of an inch long. And those little fibres are then going to stick to the longer fibres. So I'm going to use the longer fibres as smaller peripheral branches, and then the little ones on the ends that form little tufts, they are going to take the vegetate or the leaves. Now after these smaller fibres have dried onto the larger fibres, we can then dab some glue onto the smaller fibres and sprinkle it. You find it, for the first pass it will be fairly sparse because it's sticking to very small fibres, but don't worry about that. We will repeat this process a few times, and you'll find that you'll build up a good canopy eventually. So I'll take you through this a couple time-lapse steps here. And on this last tree, we're going for the second time around of just dabbing the glue onto the fibers that didn't get any the first time around. And you just keep doing that until it gets beefed up to the point where you like the look of your tree and the foliage that's on it. If you want it sparse, just leave it sparse. If you want it more, let that pass dry and then do it again. I think it still needs another layer or two. Right, the fourth kind of tree use for these trunks is when you get a root that's very long and skinny and nothing at the top. You can take another pre-made tree and snip the wire off the bottom end, and with a nail or a kebab stick you can make like a hole into it, so that when you are going to blob some glue into there, you can then poke the long skinny trunk up into the tree, so that it will then provide a head for your tree trunk, and let that dry that way. A fifth way to use these trunks is, once again with a skinny one, you can take your glue and you get smaller bits of vegetation and glue them onto the tree in different blobby bits, so that you get a tree that's a little bit more disorderly or disorganized, but in blobs rather than one big blob. You get smaller blobs. Right, the sixth kind of tree you can get out of a trunk like that is to get the very tip that doesn't necessarily have to have anything in there, and so you can let them dry also and paint some glue on the end of them, dunk them into the fiber, and you'll come out with some interesting little shapes of trees that you will then put foliage on. So that you're going to get a smaller, slightly more scrubby tree by applying your glue all over it. And you can apply several layers of vegetation so that it becomes a little bit more robust in its foliage, but you're starting to get a smaller tree with a little tuft on the end. Now, the tree turned out reasonably nice as it is, but you might want to add a little bit more thickness and bulk to the vegetation, so just randomly add a few more drops and blobs to the existing vegetation, and then sprinkle that, and you'll find it will get a lot more robust, so you get a more robust head to it. And type number 7, nothing is wasted. Even the little tiny fibrous bits we can break off, so that we have a little stick like that. Apply a little glob of glue to the very tip of it, and then dip that or sprinkle that into the longish fibers, so that we're going to get, once it dries, a very light stick with fibers on like that. Now with the long fibers, we can paint those with some glue directly, and you get long and lanky sort of branches. We can repeat that to get them a little bit. And going for a second layer, just applying a little bit of glue to all of those fibers that we missed the first time around, and you can do it several times. You get a tree that starts to look quite nice. The second thing we can do with that is paint some more on those longer fibers, and then get some smaller fibers to stick to that, so we're going to get a little bit more of a spread out canopy on the plant. The first pass of putting vegetation on this little itty bitty one got some fibers, but now we can just go over again, putting a little bit more sawdust on. You get it slightly thicker and slightly more realistic and slightly more spreading.